Our Stories Festival was really set up to help support people from diverse backgrounds to really get into the industry.
Those people that you see do fantastic stuff, they put in the work.
I remember interviewing Grace many years ago. We still sometimes post the clips about it and stuff, but yeah, it was when you were working on Idris's show, right? Yeah. And I remember catching up with you last year and just you were like, oh yeah, I've got my show coming out on ITV. But it's a show you created and wrote, yes. And it's the whole series. It's not just like a standalone episode or something. And then you got another project greenlit,
yes,
which I'm not sure if you can tell us about. But I just found it fascinating in terms of going from doing a project here and there to now you're in the game. It's prime time. It's like, oh no, cool, I got to do this show, I got to do that show. And they're your own shows, which is like the dream.
It is, I guess it's the dream. Yeah, it's a sort of pinch me kind of feeling, I think, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So I want to know what's been going on in the past year or two, Grace, before we get into how. What's been happening?
Oh, okay, so yes, my first original drama for television aired in spring this year. So it came out, it's called Malpractice. And as Pierre was saying, it is something that I wrote it, I created it, I wrote it, I exec produced the show.
You exec on it as well?
Exec as well, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, which was a slight battle, trying to get myself an exec producer credit on a show that I had created myself. But in the end, that was possible. Yeah, maybe there's a story there. But yes, it's been a steep learning curve for me, because I had a career before. I was a doctor. I practiced as a doctor for over a decade, and then was doing part-time medicine and like doing the Force screenwriting course. I saw you've got Channel 4 sponsoring this. And after that, I got my first writing job working with Idris Elba. Gave me my big break. And after that, I was just doing the thing of trying to write pilots, trying to get people to pay me to write those pilots. I wasn't writing them for free, and trying to get someone to invest in my idea and bring it to series.
I'm going to ask you just one or two questions really quickly, right? In terms of, so Malpractice, right? Big ITV drama, great press around it. There was a particular company that produced it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you share, please?
So that was World Productions, who are very, very well known for making Line of Duty, Bodyguard, Vigil. And if you've watched Malpractice, I think part of the reason that it actually got funded so quickly by ITV was that they pitched it as a medical line of duty. So ITV asked us not to show it to any other channels, and they, I guess this is the dream, without seeing a treatment, they funded a pilot for me, which was pretty great.
Wow, okay, wow. Yes. Okay, cool. So, cool, that's from the producing side. Who directed it?
Directed by Phil Barantini, who made a really great independent film called Boiling Point.
Yes.
Which, came out about 1.5 years, 2 years ago now.
So you've got all the big hitters, basically, and then ITV just threw the money at you. In terms of, before getting to that point, right, you mentioned that, you got the opportunity to write on Idris's show, which is great. That's one job. Yeah. What happened? What was that like after that? So you've written on the show, but then were you still working at that time? What was that honest, creative struggle like, I guess?
Yeah, I mean...
If it was a struggle, it might not have been.
No, there's definitely a struggle. I mean, I think, with writing, what is really difficult, you think, I want to make TV, I want to make film, I want to write for the screen, and then you're a bit stuck. You're like, well, how do I do this? There's no clear-cut pathway of how you do that. So you might write a spec script, you might, as I did, screenwriting.info or screenwritinginfo.com. That was my Bible. I was working full time, so I couldn't afford to do any courses, and there are lots of great resources on the internet. Lots of free scripts that are available if you look in the right places, like BBC Writers' Room. So I used BBC Writers' Room, I used screenwritinginfo.com. My brother, who was here today, got me a semi-illegal download of Final Draft to help me with my structuring. And I wrote my first spec script. And I think you then think, right, I've got this script, I'm going to send it out. I looked up on Script Angel all the different production companies who were willing to read scripts that weren't, being submitted via known agents and places like that, and got a load of rejections. So what I want to say is that same script is the script that got me shortlisted for screenwriting, and it's the same script that World Productions read and thought they could turn into a medical version of Line of Duty. So you can get loads of rejections, it's very subjective, and if you think you've written something that you really believe in, then persist. I mean, it can take years, sometimes it can take over a decade, but I think if you've got a good story that you believe in and you think is worth something, don't give up after the first few rejections, because this industry is loaded with them.
Wow. It sounds like the 4 screenwriting course was quite a catalyst for you, right? At what point did you get your agent?
So I applied for screenwriting with the spec script that's called Ward 6, which kind of later morphed into Malpractice. And I mean, that was back in, I'm trying to think, the first time I applied for screenwriting, maybe it's 2016 or something, and I got down to the last 25. So I got shortlisted from all the applicants, which was incredibly exciting. I was kind of walking on air, went to Channel 4, was like, this is the dream. And I didn't get selected, and they said, come back again next year, try and write another script, which, if you write, feels like someone has told you, you're nearly at the top of a mountain and they've told you have to go back to the bottom and start climbing up again. But I wrote another script which was about race riots in 1950s Notting Hill, and something that I wanted to turn into a TV series for a long time. And the next year I got onto full screenwriting, and I actually got my agent in between those two, so being shortlisted and then getting onto the program. Because I then had these 2 spec scripts, the one that was based on my career, and then one that was completely random, like historical, just thing that I'd been interested in because I'd lived in West London and I lived there when there were the riots in the August summer, I can't remember what year that was, like 2014 or something, and looking into that, I was like, oh my God, in these same streets, there were race riots in like 1958, and that was really fascinating to me that things hadn't really changed that much, looking into what the kind of triggers were with the police and the different ethnic minority communities that lived in that area. So had these 2 very different stories, and my agent, I'd been trying to come to events like this, talking to random people, you never know which minor connection you make. Even if you don't meet them again, they might pass your name on to somebody else. So it was through like a connection of a connection who I'd sent my scripts to by email, who I'm pretty sure didn't read any of them, but passed them on to somebody else who was an agent at CAA, who had agreed to meet me, I thought, for a coffee, just to, a lot of you here probably know, you meet a lot of people. Some of them give you good advice, some of them don't give you good advice, some of them won't bother to reply to your messages, some of them will, and this was just one of those emails that ended up in a coffee with a CAA agent who, CAA work primarily in America. So I'd done a night shift, she'd read my 2 scripts, and she completely bowled me over by saying that she wanted to represent me, but she worked in America, and she would rep me until she found me a UK agent, and she found me a UK agent at the agency, and Tanya has been my agent ever since then. So you think you're going to all these meetings, you're going to conferences, you're going to talks, you collect so many different emails and things, and you bump into the same people at these things. You send out your scripts, you don't hear anything, and then it's one random connection that can literally change the course of everything. So, yeah, I think it can be disheartening at times, but I would just say keep going, because you don't know like which connection and conversation is going to end up being the thing that changes where your screenwriting career is going.
Amazing. So you mentioned something earlier, right? You said that you were in the medical field for a decade, right? And then you've oscillated over to writing. Where did you learn to write?
I don't know. I mean, like, my brother is here, so I think he'd probably say, in our family, my sister, my brother, myself, I think my brother and I more so would be writing stories from when we were little, like as long as I can remember, like short stories, anything. If I watched something on TV, I mean, I even wrote my own kind of musical version of Coming to America, which nobody will ever see. Like anything that I watched, I wanted to turn into a story. And I think I just had always known that I wanted to write. And I mean, I was writing poetry that would not have been very good as a primary school child. And yeah, all through, like as far back as I can remember, I wanted to write. And my dad, he was very strict, very, very strict West African Ghanaian dad. It's like, you cannot go to university and study a creative subject. You must do something vocational. So my sister did pharmacy, I did medicine, my brother did dentistry, and all of us, she's now an actress, I write, and he's just finishing a directing course.
Wow,
So,
come on. Wow, all right.
Yeah, I don't know. So I don't know where it comes from. I don't know where I learned it. Probably I read a lot. I read, like, yeah, if you come to my flat, it's sort of, there's just way too many books everywhere. It's the one thing. It's like guilty pleasure. I read a lot.
Okay, no, I love that. It's clearly paying off. In terms of going from the medical field to writing, right? And you mentioned like that transition point. When did you go full-time as a writer?
Full-time. So there were two periods, and one where I sort of chickened out of doing full-time writing. So I had, in medicine, that you kind of go through and you get to being a consultant, and that's meant to be the pinnacle of your career. And that happened for me when I just finished full screenwriting, and I became a consultant. And a few weeks, probably a few days into the job, I just had this really strong sort of cognitive dissonance feeling that I was a million miles away from what I actually wanted to be doing with my whole life. And it felt like a very early life crisis. But I had my family, my parents, who were just thrilled that I'd become a consultant in a central London hospital, telling all their friends. But all I wanted to do was quit. And actually, I became like very, very depressed and was trying to do this job. And it was actually my GP who said, you just need to stop, because it's not, you know, and this is another doctor telling another doctor that medicine might not be for you. So I resigned from being a consultant, which was not easy and involved a slightly comical story of me telling my parents that I was on annual leave, and because I could no longer afford to rent, because obviously you live sort of hand to mouth, I had to give up my flat. I moved back in with my parents. I'm like, I don't know what they think this annual leave is. And they didn't know. I just couldn't tell them that I had resigned from my job. Oh. And so I moved back into my bedroom in their house, and I was working. And I decided that I was going to give the writing a year. Obviously, I did have the safety net that I was a fully qualified medical consultant, so even though I'd resigned, I could go back. So I did have that big safety net, but it was still a leap of faith in myself, because I had no other evidence that I was ever going to have a screenwriting career. And yeah, I just kind of worked on my spec scripts. I'd finished full screenwriting, got no offers of anything after that, which was also...
Is that usually the expectation of doing a course like that?
So I think going into it, I had thought you do full screenwriting. If you don't already have an agent, you get an agent. You get all these wonderful offers of jobs or like commissions from every company going, because they do this really quite wonderful thing where at the end of your course, they send out your script that you've done, and they do like a big kind of party drinks event, and they invite, I mean, there are representatives from all of the major companies there. It's you know, and you've got lots of commissioners as well. And whilst this had been a source of great excitement for me when I had applied, when it was coming up to it and I had a script that I wasn't necessarily really happy with, and I had my agent with me who was like marching me around to trying to pitch it to all these people, I just got to the end of that event and felt like I had massively failed and not utilised this incredible opportunity. So nobody wanted to make my script. You get, like, I think Channel 4 can, how do you say, they will option it for a period of months, and they've got the first option to make it. And it's actually quite a common thing. I mean, I think they might even have it on their website, that most of the people who write scripts on full screenwriting, I don't think any of the scripts have ever been made actually into an original TV show. You know, but a lot of the writers on it go on to have screenwriting careers. And I think that's one of the things that is quite hard, I think, to understand about screenwriting, that you can spend, you know, a whole career writing spec scripts and never actually make a show, which is probably terrifying. But I think no one really tells you those things when you're at the beginning, and that it takes time, and that you can still make a living from doing all these spec scripts. But I think it can be, I'm sorry, not spec scripts, but pilot commissions. But it can be quite a roller coaster of, I've got a treatment commissioned, and then I've got a script commission, and then you're like, when are they going to commission that whole series? When is it going to be greenlit? Whereas most working writers, I'd say, are working on script commissions that don't necessarily get through to being greenlit, and you can make a career from those commissions, but you can also make a career from writing on other people's shows and doing episodes, and yeah, like it builds and builds that way, really.
Amazing, amazing. Any questions from the audience with regards to writing? Yes, go for it. Any mics here? No mics? A mic is on its way. Whilst the mic's on its way, right? So you're an exec on Malpractice, right? How did that happen, please? And what does that mean? What does that mean?
Yeah. Okay, so when the show first got before it got greenlit. So this is also about having a good agent. So your agent can be your best friend, or they could be your worst enemy. And my agent, she's really, really good. So with any commission that she is negotiating for me on, if it's an original idea of mine, from pilot and treatment commission, she will try and get into the contract that because it's originated from me, if it goes to series, I should be an exec producer so that I can have a say in the overall kind of look of the show and that kind of thing. So with Malpractice, what happened initially, you know, obviously it's an original idea, but not just an original idea, it's based on my time as a junior doctor, so it's based on my life experience. She felt that I should definitely be an exec producer on that, and it's medical, I'm a medical specialist, and I was saving the company some money by, so they don't have to do as much research because they've got the first-hand person there. But what I think I'd say in those days, it wasn't that long ago, this is a company that's been around for a very long time. So for them, their feeling was that first-time writers shouldn't necessarily be exec producers on projects. And they have a blanket thing, like Jed Mercurio, who'd worked with them as well on Line of Duty. He was an associate producer on his first series, and then when it got recommissioned, he became an exec producer. So they were saying, you know, that's the same, it's a blanket policy that they have. So that is what they agreed. I was an associate producer, and my agent went back and forth, but no, they wouldn't budge on it. So along the way, something happened that meant that I could become an exec producer, and it's slightly contentious. So
We don't
let's
want to
say-
stop you writing for TV consistently.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but sometimes I think you have to. It's a difficult industry to navigate, but I think sometimes you have to fight for what you think is appropriate recognition for what effort you've put into a project. Yeah.
It sounds like you and your agent had a very measured understanding of being able to fight for that. Yeah. Because I guess it's a balance. You're not like a young upstart that's like, hey, give me everything and the money too. Do you know what I mean? So, okay, cool. Perfect. Yes, the question, sir.
Hi, I just wanted to ask, so when you apply for things like 4Screen and BBC Writers' Room, you don't tend to get feedback if you don't qualify. So if you've handed in something prior but you didn't get feedback, you just got rejected, what are some resources you can tap into or people you can talk to that can help you get your script to where it needs to be?
So, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's difficult because if you don't know people who are working within the industry who can tell you what elements of a script prevent it from going forward, how are you supposed to know how to make that script better? And even though I said, on the internet there are loads of good resources, there are lots of people who put stuff out there that isn't necessarily that helpful either. I think getting a script consultant, I know a lot of people offer that service, and for screenwriting, Phil Shelley, he does offer a script consulting service. I think you would have to pay, and I don't know how much you would pay for that, but he is someone who is reputable, and I think he would put together a very good package of notes for you about your script. I know that he does that, and there are other script consultant agencies as well. So I think Curtis Brown, I think they might have one as well where they do some script consulting and feedback for you.
Amazing, great question. We're gonna come back. Please hold that question. I have a question for you, Grace, right? So, commanding a series, right? How is that different to being a writer on someone else's project?
Yeah, so episodic writing is, I'd say, the kind of bread and butter of being a working screenwriter in the UK and in America particularly. And it's a nice way to step into the industry because you have the support of a writing team. If you're doing an episode, there are the other writers, there's a lead writer, there are other examples of what is to be expected and produced. If you've been involved right from the writer's room, then you have probably helped create and shape the whole series. Sometimes you can just be brought in further along that process when stuff has been decided, so there's various points at which you can come in as an episodic writer. But it's nice to work within that, that framework, having other people that you can speak to, especially when it starts to get tougher as you're coming up to production, being able to bounce ideas off the other writers. And yeah, there's generally a lot less pressure because if you're like, oh no, this show doesn't seem to be going the way I've hoped it would, it's not your show, it's just an episode. Credits are currency, so even if the show completely bombs, you've got a credit and you can run with that and you can use it as leverage for doing other stuff. And it literally is that credits are currency, and it doesn't really matter what show you got those credits on. You take those credits forward and you can use that to do the stuff that you actually want to do. So yeah, it's like a lower pressure way, it's not no pressure, of getting the credits that allow you to be taken a bit more seriously within within the industry.
Love it, love it, love it. Yes, sorry, who had their hand up? Yes, go for it. Sorry, I have to point. I'm not trying to be rude.
Hello, 1, 2. I'm Betsy, lovely to meet you. Thank you for speaking today. I am an actor who has last year found love in writing. So I'm currently doing a show reel on Monday. I actually wrote my own scripts instead of choosing a BBC writer, as I wanted to challenge myself for the future. As a writer journey, how do you know that you're made to be a writer for TV and film? And surely for you, starting out as a kid, I've only started last year, how do you know that, you know, to keep that fire and that spark and to know that it's the path for you?
So, yeah, because when I was writing as a kid, like teenager, I was writing short stories and novels. Like it never occurred to me to try and write a script. I'd not written plays or anything like that. But when I was trying to write novels, I really, really liked the dialogue bits and all the other stuff. I just thought, oh no, I'm plodding through this and plodding through this. And then the dialogue stuff I found just a lot easier. And also, I really found whenever I'm writing that it's very visual. So I think it's a sort of say what you see, like the catchphrase thing. For me, I will imagine it first, and it's very, very vivid, and then I will write down on the page something which hopefully when read translates to the images that are in my mind. And in that respect, the script is just a template. So it's a very specific style of writing, and it's very visually led. And I guess because I haven't had any formal training in it, I don't know. It's very instinctive, and I don't know what they would teach you on a screenwriting course. But for me, I would say it felt very natural and relatively easy to write scripts compared to other forms of writing. But then at the same time, I always think writing a script is not the most natural form of writing because, in many ways it's quite contrived and there's a formula to like the structure and stuff as well.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to ask one question and we'll take one more question from the audience. Grace, there are various different types of writers in the audience. People like Betsy, who are at the beginning of their journey, people who are maybe a bit more seasoned in the craft, but maybe don't have any credits, or maybe one or two on like maybe smaller projects and stuff. What one piece of advice would you give to someone who wants to be a writer and make it? And when I say make it, I would reference the position you're in now, where you're creating a show, you're writing on it, you're an exec, and all the top tier talent, directors and production companies are also behind it, and then it's on a mainstream broadcast, and it's prime. Like, do you know what I mean? Like that, I would class it as making it as a writer. What one piece of advice would you give?
That you need to have self-belief. You have to trust your ideas, like really, really have confidence in yourself. And I mean, I say that as someone whose confidence wanes, but if you know, like with Malpractice, there have been many points along the way where I have felt very anxious, very uncertain about things. Like in TV and film, there are so many voices around you. So you have your idea. You know it's good because a few people are interested in it. You might not have that full-on commission yet, but you know, you have all of these random meetings with producers, and if a few of them are interested, or even just one of them is interested in that idea, you know there's something in it. So as you go further along that journey, many more voices will be added to it. The more, you know, the further along that path you go, and many people will have different ideas of how that idea should look. But you, as the creator, know what it was you thought of originally and what it was that interested those early kind of investors in you and your idea. So try really hard not to be swayed by I mean, there will be dozens sometimes like of other voices who will try and come in on that, because if you have a good idea and people see a commercial value in it, they'll want to kind of magnify that. So you've got to try and stay focused on what it was in essence that you wanted to do, and try and follow that through. So just self-belief. I think it's so easy to get lost in like the vastness of TV and film, I think.
Thank you. And then yes, one more question from the audience. Yes, you. Thank you, Sonia.
Hi, my name's Mercedes, and I just wanted to ask, has there ever been a time where you've obviously put your script forward and they've acted as if they liked the idea, but all of a sudden they've wanted to change it or water down the core meaning? And if so, how did you back yourself up or respectfully say, like, back off?
Respectfully. Yeah. I mean, that happens all the time. So that's the same thing. I mean, it's like you have a good idea, people like it, but they also are coming at it from I guess, are we talking about producers maybe who want to option an idea and then they're like, let's do this with it instead of where you're going? So sometimes producers that you're working with, script editors, they might also have wanted to be writers, but they're not, but they're still creative, so they're coming at it from a different perspective. Sometimes they have completely misunderstood what it was that you were trying to create, and it's a communication thing. But sometimes people have bad ideas, like I have bad ideas, some of the producers I work with have bad ideas, and it is really, really difficult to say to someone, I don't like that idea, I think it's dreadful. But I think if you really, really don't like the way that a producer's going with your idea, then you have to find a way out of that relationship, because it's only going to get worse if you're not able to stick to the ideas that you want, or not able to see a way to work through and compromise on the ideas. Because it might be that they are thinking about actual production, in production, what's going to work, and your ideas need to be contained, or they're just not going to translate well to screen, which is something that, as newer writers, we don't necessarily know that because we've not done that end of it, and they do have that experience. But sometimes it's literally complete creative difference, and if it's not going to work, there are so many producers out there, so many different production companies, that you can find someone and somewhere that is the right home for your ideas and your project. So you don't have to just stick with the first person who says they like it if they're going to morph it into something that you wouldn't be proud of.
Amazing, thank you, great question. Can we have a round of applause for Grace? Thank you.